a Marxist analysis of Twitch. Today on The Social Situation, I'd like to talk about an issue of labor exploitation that has been devoid of Marxist analysis. I'm the benefactor, and this is The Social Situation of Twitch.
Thank you for your question, but I have to say we're capitalists.
Hello everyone, Benefactor here. This is the first episode of The Social Situation where we talk about a wide variety of topics using a Marxist lens. Before we get into the internal contradictions and class conflict within Twitch, I need to put things in perspective with an introduction on material analysis outside of a wage market. You can learn more about the basics and history of Marxism through my interview on Facebook with Azure Scapegoat, linked to in the video description below. It's true that Marxism can be used as a tool to understand a multitude of systems within a wide variety of scientific fields from anthropology, socioeconomics, political science, and much more. To apply the dialectic analysis on material within a system such as the family household where labor is produced, you can begin to see how class conflict is possible outside a wage market. Marxism suggests that wherever there is a division of labor beyond one's sustenance, there must also be a surplus of value to that labor regardless of any physical contract. Within any household, there is an undefined amount of necessary labor to be done. Cooking, cleaning, maintenance, etc. You also have a total amount of undefined free time to appropriate to said labor. In that context, any labor generated outside of sustaining yourself is considered surplus value, after which there is the decision of how to distribute this surplus. If I live with a spouse, and we both have a specific amount of free time to address the necessary labor, but I appoint all the work to the female, this can create class conflict within a feudal household that exposes an internal contradiction. The contradiction of a man constantly struggling to do less labor within the house, and a woman always struggling to do more while trying to maintain loyalty and love to one another. Let's switch our focus for a minute from the household to a thriving online capitalist society, which currently seems to be isolated from objective Marxist critique. That is until now. If we are to analyze the material conditions of a community such as Twitch, which operates as an eerie microcosm of our dystopian gig economy, in which a moderator's class are loosely compensated for the fruit of their labor by a content creator class of a few elitists, those minority whom are exponentially expanding their profit margins. A system of exploitation that Twitch itself and their capitalist, for-profit algorithm reinforces.
That when that deal is done, the $20 an hour, something is going on that you actually know, but you don't want to face, but I'm going to show it to you. When I hire you for 20 bucks an hour, I know that for every hour that you give me your work, your brains, your muscles to work, I'm going to have more stuff to sell at the end of the day because you're added to my workforce. You're going to help me produce more goods or more services or better quality goods and services than I would have if I didn't employ you. So I'm going to say to myself, it costs me to get Abby $20 an hour. What do I get out of it? I'm going to have the output that Abby adds by her labor. Now that has got to be more than 20 bucks. So the only way I'm going to hire you for $20 an hour is if you produce more in the hour than I give you. So when you feel in a vague way at the end of the day, as you walk home, that you're being ripped off, you're absolutely right. Or in Marx's language, exploited. So what does the capitalist say? I earned it. No, you didn't. He just ripped people off.
After all, Twitch's algorithm is only based on views, meaning the more you have, the more the algorithm favors you. This may be an equal distribution of shared content among the platform, but it is no means equitable or gives any consideration to material requirements for those starting out. This ultimately leads to a system that favors those who have already established a major following on other platforms and gives little help to those at the bottom who are relatively unknown. Some famous streamers might claim they made it on their own. However, when analyzing the various flaws in a system that shares information via the distribution process favoring already established mainstream content, these not-so-obvious flaws become obvious. This method of favoring distribution with already popular content is an issue in and of itself, giving less room than other platforms to obtain new mainstream content creators, ignoring any fact that some may have had an initial boost due to viewers from a different platform whom someone else had built. Let alone the fact that this system of distributing mainstream content is solely based on raw views, a system YouTube itself even scrapped due to its inconsistent and unfair results. One must consider any following outside of said platform to have an actual objective critique on legitimate meritocracy within a community like Twitch. But I digress. Meritocracy aside, the community as a whole within Twitch operates within a capitalist for-profit structure. One that sees every choice it makes in the name of prioritizing profit and reinforcing said power structure above any kind of actual consumer requirement. In other words, there is every motivation to maintain a structure of class conflict. When looking a little closer at the actual labor produced within a Twitch community, an odd thing becomes apparent. The content creator class and the moderator class are largely separated by two factors: the algorithm, which favors those at the top and reinforces its for-profit model of success by maximizing advertisement investments. In other words, the more views you have, the more it will recommend your content to maximize the investment from advertisers. After all, there's no profit in a system that might show you something you won't like, causing you to not view any potential advertisement. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's impossible for someone to make it big on Twitch now, just improbable. I mean, the proof is in the put-in, and what we see put in are very few mainstream content creators contrasted with a large variety of streamers who have maintained 0 views, sometimes for years. Facebook isn't notorious for having a more equitable distribution of information. However, there are systems in place to level the playing field. A caveat here is that Facebook's algorithm is still operating under a for-profit model, meaning it might be a bit more equitable in the distribution. But they have found another way to tighten the noose of capital by implementing a pay-to-play feature that is largely necessary after the initial charity boost the algorithm gives you when first starting out. Factor 2 is probably the most frustrating and an area of exploitation I've noticed for a while. The struggles between the content creator class and moderator class of these communities. As the content creator class grows, these struggles grow more apparent as paralleled by any other capitalist enterprise. Chat moderation becomes a necessary labor within any Twitch sub-community. With the growth of said business comes the requirement to divide that labor. Now, we've already discussed that when any labor produced is divided, there is always a surplus value, or more value added by the workers than they input. This changing of material translates into the toil and trouble one must take to moderating a chat from trolls and other offenders. Moderators are sometimes also tasked with promotional duties for the enterprise. Let's contrast this with the largely labor-free content creator class who are regularly absent from this chat maintenance labor, but always get to decide what to do with its surplus value. The void in any mandatory wage compensation leads to inevitable class struggles within the Twitch sub-communities and online community as a whole, as the moderator class grows ever more alienated from the product of their labor. These class contradictions by their very nature are paradoxical, as one class is constantly struggling to maintain the growth and quality of their enterprise, while the other is struggling to get more recognition to grow theirs. The quid pro quo essentially taking the form of raids. A raid is a way of sending all your viewers to another business when you're done broadcasting, enticing those without a guaranteed paycheck to do free labor for you. This is no guarantee that these viewers will pay to stay. In other words, there are no set standards for compensation for said work. This hope of recognition and subsequent growth from someone else's success teeters closely to a modern-day multi-level marketing scheme. Some moderators often being compensated for their work with gift cards, or not at all in some cases.
Pour a glass of yellowtail because you have nothing better.
Don't be fooled. Just because the king is generous doesn't make them less of an authoritarian figurehead.
You're welcome.
In this way, Twitch has set up their platform to incentivize centralized authoritarian hierarchies. By limiting the platform to one content creator per business, it eliminates any potential for co-opted labor. To sum it up, Twitch is a strange amalgamation of a feudal and capitalist economic system that has some of the worst aspects of a gig economy and multi-level marketing scheme combined into one giant mess of class struggles.
That concludes our bro tip of the week.
However, being a moderator and a Twitch entrepreneur are not mutually exclusive. Some moderators are content creators, others aren't. This unusual dichotomy demonstrates the fluidity between the feudal and capitalist economic systems and can simultaneously classify some moderators to be in two different social classes. A king in one subcommunity and a servant in another. Reminiscence of cult-like behavior may start to formulate as those at the bottom deify those at the top. Let's remind ourselves of the characteristics of a cult. Great devotion to a person or idea, as well as persons united by devotion or allegiance to an artistic or intellectual movement or figure. I'm in no way implying we have any cults on Twitch now. These are simple observations. However, a caveat of inevitability still remains for this scenario, as unresolved class conflict always leads to pathological and destructive behavior. Listen, I'm not trying to be condescending or morally superior by pointing out this exploitation. I also don't have all the answers on how to reorganize labor within this kind of system, but I hope that by raising awareness to these issues, we can come together and formulate practical solutions. After all, how are we going to fix a problem if we aren't aware of it in the first place? As Marxists, class struggles within online communities need to be addressed if we are going to try and address class struggles in real life. Have I made mistakes in my analysis here? I'm sure I have. Do I hope that I can rely on my fellow Marxist colleagues for constructive critique and support? Of course. I implore all my friends to observe that this underlying notion of exploitation is real and give me a different perspective on this topic. But I am optimistic that with enough collaboration we can formulate a real strategy for more progressive policies, such as a mandatory minimum wage for moderators tied to the productivity of the channel. Or maybe Twitch can just change their algorithm to allow for multiple content creators per licensed business. Personally, I chose Facebook's platform over Twitch's platform for some of these exact reasons. The main one being I am able to divide labor more equitably and democratically. This leaves room for my media outlet to expand into a worker co-op. I have that ability to say, if you want to become a moderator for my business, you will also get to be a content creator as well. And we all vote on what to do with the surplus of labor. I hope this topic was enlightening, and if you enjoy my content, I do suggest you head over to my Facebook page, where I have loads of videos and articles. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to me via direct message. We also have a Patreon and WhatsApp for donations. They are not required, but always greatly appreciated. Thanks for tuning in for this week's episode of The Social Situation. Remember, beneficence is beautiful.